we all know, and young America right now is at a crossroad. There's good news, and there's bad news. So let's take the bad news first. Not only is America being affected by one of the worst economic disasters of the last several years, but its young people are facing tremendous unemployment and underemployment. Right now, millennials have 40% more likely chance of being unemployed in America today. 40%. Around the world, for all of our international friends, 81 million young people, 81 million, are unemployed. This has reached chronic epidemic levels. And it's because of the amazing people in this room that something can be done. There may be real challenges here, but there are also real solutions. You know, I was just saying to a couple of folks in the audience earlier, I was blown away by going to some of the roundtables today, just kind of walking around and listening to the various different programs being run around this country. That I, somebody who I would like to consider myself somebody pretty entrenched in the entrepreneur space, has never heard about it. And that's incredible. I am thrilled and I'm honored to be part of educators who actually care about entrepreneurship education in America, because it's far and few between, as you all know. So what I'm going to go through today is a little bit about who we are as the Young Entrepreneur Council and some recommendations for what the problems America faces and the solutions that we can move forward together on the government level, on the education level, and in the private sector. Now, I warn you, some of the stuff that you're going to see has come from the students themselves. We've recently surveyed 1,600 young people across the United States in an accredited poll called the Youth Entrepreneurship Study of 2011, conducted by the Young Entrepreneur Council, Buzz Marketing Group. And you're going to see what young people think of education, government, as well as the certain areas and problems that they face that we believe, together, we can combat. So let's begin. My journey starts in 2004. I was a student of New York University, film school. Most people think I went to business school. The ironic part about this whole thing is that I'm one of the few students that, while I had no entrepreneurship education, I was so sick and tired of hearing that class was the only way for me to get a quote-unquote employment opportunity after school that I started in business when I was in New York University in a totally different field. I lied about my age all the way through, telling folks I was 30 years old, and I ended up producing major entertainment properties like commercials and music videos in the entertainment business. But I quickly had all of the trials and tribulations and mistakes that a young person makes. I spent too much money. I'll never forget in New York City, I actually said to somebody, oh, $20,000 a month in New York City office space? No problem. And I signed a year-long lease, which almost bankrupted. Number two, I had the audacity to believe that I could diversify without looking at more than a 2-week cash flow. So I thought, wow, all I have to do is just do this service and that service and stop hiring people, and I can grow my company 1,000 times over. I did not have the fundamentals of entrepreneurship education that you teach your students every day. And as a result of that, upon graduation, I'm sitting at a kitchen table 3 days before actual ceremony. My mother, a 25-year veteran of the New York City Board of Education, special education teacher. My father, a 26-year account executive at a flooring company, says, okay, Scott, it's time to get a real job. What's that? I had no idea. A real job? I just spent all this time building this company. I paid tens of thousands of dollars while in school, only to watch it dwindle away, fail miserably, and leave me with a bankrupt company and $700 left to my name after a $130,000 education. Started sweating right about that. And I realized something. Was I going to take all of the hard knocks, all of that frankly, crap that I dealt with, all of those beats on the head and in the back, and forget it to just go get some underemployed opportunity, something that might not even be in my field? The answer was no. I took that $700, learned from every single mistake, and through the trials and tribulations of entrepreneurship, I built a business that today, I'm happy to say, is still in business, has clients like Procter & Gamble, Dolby, The Gap, and a lot of other Fortune 500 brands. And I did it without a single investor, without a partner, and without any strategic entrepreneur education in my entire career to this humble age of 28 years old. But the problem is that was a problem for me. And I started a business, but I was upset and just annoyed with how hard it was because I knew the resources had to be there. So about a year or 2 years into the creation of my successful business, I said there's got to be a better way. And I began to basically email every single editor and every single entrepreneurship and small business magazine in the country and publication, telling them that I wanted to be a young entrepreneur columnist. I wanted to tell people what they need to know about the trenches. And after 110 emails, the editor of Entrepreneur magazine got back to me and said, if you swear to me that you will never send another email, I will let you write a column. That column became something called Never Get a Real Job, which today has millions of people that read it every month through all different publications like the Wall Street Journal, Time, and many others. I then created a peer group called the Young Entrepreneur Council, which is today a group of entrepreneurs that are seriously, but probably some of America's most successful young people under the age of 35. Founders of companies like Living Social, founders of companies like Reddit or College Students Hall Jump, multi-million-dollar businesses created by our young people that serve as role models and educators in peer-to-peer mentorship fashion. More of which I'll talk to you later. But let's talk really quickly about today's Scots. The young people today that you serve, or the ones, unfortunately, that you don't. To understand the problem that young people face, you first have to see how many people are actually getting entrepreneurship education in America. The answer is startlingly low. 74% of young people today have never attended, this is K through 12, a single entrepreneurship class. And of the ones that have, 72% said those classes were highly ineffective and useless. This is from that survey I mentioned earlier. This is troubling, because I'm sure most of these people, in fact probably a vast majority of these people, have never had educators like you that can. It was simply textbook learning that they said, if we just go down this path and, answer the Q's and A's and go down the road, this is the entrepreneurship book, we're good to go. And unfortunately that has failed us. And how bad has it failed us? We have $27,000 on average debt when we graduate college, and $1 trillion in college student loan debt, with currently an 8.8% default rate. That is ruining literally hundreds of thousands of young people's credit, potentially for life. And not only stopping them from being job creators and business owners in their 20s, but potentially stifling the 30, 40, and 50-somethings of the next years to come. This is a very narrow-minded view for people to think that young entrepreneurship is not important to this economic recovery. It's even more important for people to realize that while we have a greater global need to create multiple opportunities in multiple generations, this is the generation that at some point will take over it all. And by starting them on a faulty foundation, we are dooming ourselves to not just repeat our economic calamity of the years past, but to go far worse. Unemployment today is a disaster. We are double the national average. In some communities, minorities are going through upwards of 50 to 60% unemployment in the youth ranks. Unacceptable. But yet the same old mantra applies, because parents and mentors frankly don't understand what entrepreneurship is in this country. And around the world, as I've seen. And so what do they say? You gotta go get that real job. That's the only way they know forward. We have to change that mindset. We have to change the culture. This is not simply about keeping the status quo. The new economy has fundamentally changed everything, and if you don't believe that, we are in a lot of trouble. So what can we do? Well, first, the good news, and as I spoke to earlier, there's bad news and good news, is that entrepreneurship has never been more accessible to our young people. But it's a silver lining that has come out of desperation and necessity. The problem still exists that there are many barriers we face. Let's take some of the basic ones. No access to microloans or traditional capital in the youth ranks. This is not a new problem. This is something that's been around for quite some time, based on collateral or based on certain types of cosigns that young people simply, in a million years, could not possibly get. We face other issues like the student loan debt I mentioned, which stifles the startups from even having any startup capital or operating capital. We have problems becoming boomerangs that are so poor and broke upon graduation, we're forced to move back in with our parents in an unsupportive environment and pretty much told, go get a real job, and that's it. This is a generation that has been called the boomerang generation, among other negatives, because of the fact that this generation has been the most likely to be the first generation that has actually en masse graduated to such high unemployment that we have no options. We either go bankrupt, or we go underemployed, or we move back home. Entrepreneurship education, as we've said, is a big issue. As I said before, 74% of something that, frankly, is so easily plug and play, as we all know. We have the programs. We've got the understanding. This room alone proves that there are solutions. And I'll get to in a minute why those solutions in many cases aren't done nationally. We also lack real concrete mentoring for young people. A lot of the folks that we surveyed, didn't know what SCORE was, as an example. I think most people probably, even in the older generations, have a problem knowing what SCORE is. So the Young Entrepreneur Council provides peer-to-peer mentorship. Obviously, I know I've heard a lot of the mentorship programs that your schools have, that your communities have, but it's a lack of promotion and understanding that they exist. Not so much that they think almost that it doesn't exist, but rather that they know it's there is the biggest issue we found. The tech-only fatigue is another thing. I consider myself a 99%er, and I said that before Occupy Wall Street did, just letting y'all know. And what I mean by that is everybody thinks now it's about Facebook and Groupon. Right? You have to build the next IPO, multi-billion-dollar business, and live your MTV Cribs fantasy life, because that's what entrepreneurship is about when you've been watching American Idol since you're 10 years old. The problem is that has created a generation of people that think the only way forward is by creating some tech business that they either have unrealistic expectations about, or have no real skills on any level from an engineering perspective or anything else to actually realize that vision. So that's another problem. And the last problem that we've noticed is we are very, very pompous and egotistical. I don't know, how many of you have millennial kids? Oh, you hold up, like, oh, okay, there we go. How many people, and I suffered from this arrogance, especially when I was younger. You know, I was going to take over the world. I was going to make it no matter what it took. And to some extent, that's a good thing for millennials. The problem is, we're still of the belief of this handout-driven society. We just need to show up and we're good to go. Well, the problem is that doesn't exist. And our young people are fighting time and time again that it's too late, because every decision that would have allowed them to have maneuverability has been made before they truly understood what the real world is like. Thus the college loan debacle where it now is an example. So the real question is, what can we do? Well, the good answer is, there's a lot we can do. You're going to hear me talk about several different things. Some apply just to America, some internationally. And understand that all of the things that I discussed here tonight are things that you can all play a role. Because it's not just about you going back to your schools and back to your communities and telling young people how they can become entrepreneurs. It's about you using the power that you have over the communities that you serve and taking that to places like Congress. And telling the people and the powers that be you don't understand. And fighting for the rights of your kids who you know, if they go through the system as it exists today, are doomed to fail. That's as simple as it is. We are at a crossroads. Going the wrong way at this moment will set this generation back for decades. So with that, here are some of the opportunities that we together can work on for a better America and a better entrepreneurial ecosystem around the world. So the first, as you all know, we're all here, is there are a lot of amazing programs, incredible entrepreneurship programs. In fact, who is the folks from the charter school, Entrepreneur Charter School? I definitely have to speak to those individuals afterwards. I had not even heard there was an Entrepreneur Charter School. That's something the YEC has been working on that I'm very interested in learning more about how the accreditation program works. But these are the sorts of things, the boot camps, the teacher training programs, the things that make sense to teach our teachers and teach our young people from K to 12 the practicum that it takes, not just a textbook learning style of entrepreneurship, not just talking at them, but creating real businesses at real ages during the different developmental stages of our youth. This is vital. It needs to be rolled out. You want to know why? Here's a little secret. I was saying earlier to some of the folks. There's a reason why there's a problem in America when it comes to entrepreneurship education. How many people have heard of Title V? Title V is a program basically called well-rounded funds. So the government gives a certain amount of money every year to different districts around the country. The problem is that these well-rounded funds, the funds that are meant for programs outside of the traditional reading, writing, and arithmetic, the ones that are for more of the technology or more of the physical education programs, fall under these well-rounded programs and how school districts are allowed to pay for them. Under Title V, entrepreneurship education is not listed and not allowed en masse, limiting the ability for educators, administrators, and school districts to actually bring programs into their districts and schools. So how are we supposed to even activate these programs and get the funding we need when we're not even allowed to do so? So the step one is, what are you guys going to do? Call your congressman. Tell them that this is one of the biggest issues and it won't even cost anything. This is not a partisan issue. This is adding another checkbox to an already existing group of funding. That is one of the biggest issues that nobody knows about in America when it comes to entrepreneurship education. Oh, liberal arts degrees, the American mainstay. There was a great documentary called Waiting for Superman. Anybody see it? It said, and it's right, that in the next 2 decades, There will be more American jobs in high-growth enterprises than in our history. The problem is that nobody from our education system is going to be able to fill those jobs because our kids, no offense, are too stupid or don't have the actual skills necessary to fill those roles. And these are not underemployment opportunities. These are six-digit figure incomes. This is not small potatoes. But where this also affects the next generation is that we're so focused on pushing that college degree instead of pushing the right education that we just feed the system over and over and over again, and the vicious circle continues. We need the engineers, we need the science and math push, but we need those to be paired with real practical knowledge of what it takes to run those businesses. Simply having somebody who understands how to fix a car, as an example, but not know how to run an auto body shop is a disaster in America, and shouldn't be tolerated. The next thing we have is the fun federal student debt loan crisis. Now the good news is that there are real initiatives going on. As was mentioned earlier by Ronnie, the YEC, along with the president, has launched a new program called Gen Y Capital Partners, which I'll go into a little bit later. But the fundamental reason that that partnership exists is around a program called income-based repayment. The concept, if you haven't heard it yet, allows students who have graduated with federal student loan debt to extend their federal payment periods from 10 years to 25 years. Now what this does is, of course, increase a certain level of interest on those payments, but it offers them more opportunity for startup capital. It caps the payments of their loan post-graduation at 10% of their discretionary income. So what does that mean for startups? That means a lot for startup founders. So if you make $20,000 or less, which I'm sure you all know a lot of startup founders, when they get started, $20,000 would be a luxury. That means you pay zero money back in federal student loans if you're a part of the income-based repayment. And the best part is, this isn't a selective program. This is, you apply, if you meet the criteria, you're in. So what this is doing right now, along with our program, is we're going to pay the remaining amount of loans if you're over that $20,000 mark. But what income-based repayment does is go half the way that we believe with the council and with our partners on the Hill called the Young Invincibles. Why is it that part of this program allows for public service officials to get their loans totally forgiven after 10 years? You go into the Peace Corps, 10 years, your loans are forgiven. Well, I make the case that small business owners of this generation, if they create jobs in this country, if they create revenue in this country, well, guess what? They should be incentivized just like public service employees, because that is just as patriotic, that is just as important to our bottom line. So what we're proposing in Congress right now, and please write this down, tell everybody and your mother, it's called the Youth Entrepreneurship Act. It is currently being considered in Congress. And the goal of this program, it has multiple things from education to microloans, but the point I make here is that it will actively take student loan forgiveness and deferment to allow young entrepreneurs, legitimate young entrepreneurs, no fraud or anything like that, we have procedures for that, to decide they're going to start a business, defer their income for 1 year at an interest-free rate, and then basically be able to be on a trajectory that if they meet certain milestones of building revenue and creating employees, they will be on a track to have their loans forgiven. We're fighting very hard, and we have a lot of folks in Congress on both sides of the Hill that are fighting for this. And what this means is that within the next couple of years, if this is passed, and this year there will be an entrepreneurship bill passed, I guarantee you. If this is passed, this could lead the way to create hundreds of thousands of new jobs in America. Hundreds of thousands. This is proven studies, all over the internet. You can take a look at real stuff. This is something that can truly generate real results for this generation. But more importantly, IBR is that first step and proves that it's useful. Tell your students about this. You can go to the SBA website, it's called the Student Startup Plan, and all the information about the different revenue milestones of both themselves and the income that they receive is all on that website so they know how to apply. Let's talk about some other issues in America. We all talk about entrepreneurship, we never talk about intrapreneurship. I heard a couple of folks thankfully say it here today. Now, I am a full believer that young people should not trust the system and be entrepreneurs from the get-go. With that being said, there are a lot of young people who want to feel out the waters. In this country right now, there is no such thing as a startup job fair. We're actually creating the first one later in the spring in Startup America and a company called Raise a Careerist for anybody who's familiar. With the goal of basically saying, okay, well, how do we incentivize young people to know what a startup is, what a business is? Well, it's not by going to work for some big corporation. It's by working for the companies that have the most potential in their infancy, that are highly vetted, and organizations that really will provide real-world education. And so we're creating the American Startup Job Fair. It'll be launched probably this March. Another example of entrepreneurship is we need to be talking to the companies that are out there, the large corporations, the folks who have shown support for entrepreneurship, the ones who are most likely to not just buy out the companies at some point of the entrepreneurs of this generation, but also the folks that are supportive of strategic partnerships and elsewhere, to have internal entrepreneurship programs, to treat this generation like leaders when they are proven that they can. And these are the sorts of programs that I've heard several of you talk about how you're working with corporations to do that. We need to really promote that and get it out there in a bigger way. And lastly, I wanted to talk about internships. You know, young people today all go for college credit when they're in college about, hey, I have to go work for this company, I get 4 credits, I've done the internship thing. I know most people will basically say, hey, just show up, file this paperwork, and you're all set. You really learn nothing. In a startup environment, entrepreneurs can actually learn a ton. And so we need to be telling our college guidance counselors, our high school administrators, that we need to find local chambers of commerce. We need to find high-growth enterprises that are identified by Startup America or regional commissions and say, let's get our kids real-world education in these local and national companies that they can get real exposure, real knowledge, and not just some sort of handout for some basic credit. I love my mother and father. I still do. My mother, I always say, was a great mother, but was a terrible business advisor. Because my mom is the kind of stereotypical teacher. Hardcore union supporter, somebody who is, stuck to benefits and the whole nine. And I don't want to insult anybody here, but teachers in some states, in New York especially, it's a very strong sense of what you get for what you do. And trust me, I love education. My mother brought me up very well. The problem is that the second I wanted to that I wanted to reach for the stars. Please tell me if you've heard any of these phrases before. Reach for the stars, follow your dreams, do whatever you want. You graduate and then it's like, well, wait 10 years. And then maybe, if you just go down the path the right way, you can do that. We need to show parents and mentors through awareness programs, through the college administration's process, that entrepreneurship is not a dirty word. It's not a failure word. In fact, in my opinion, validating your college education with an entrepreneurial sense and venture is almost more rewarding because you have the ability to create something for yourself and not depend on the system. And so this is the sort of thing that at home we need to start building in the culture, from the education level to the private enterprise level to general government awareness, that it's not all about going out and getting that real job, which is an important thing that cities and states can participate in actively by doing things like entrepreneur fairs, by doing things like entrepreneur weeks, and other such things as demonstrated by folks like the great people at the Consortium. Now there's some other stuff too that comes into play, and these are 3 areas which I'll take a little time to explain. These are the 3 biggest areas, in my opinion, that affect young entrepreneurs today. Let's start with microloan financing. Fast fact, in the bipartisan, or I should say lack of any totally partisan Congress we have now, they're just slashing and burning anything they can, and maybe not really realizing the nuances of what certain areas of federal spending are. As an example, in 2010, the SBA microloan program spent $33 million. That's million, not million, by the way, just to be clear on what we're really talking about in the grand scheme of things. $33 million on microloans for everybody in the U.S. This year, they're spending $16 million. So in a time when we should be ramping up our young people that are falling flat on their face because they can't get any sort of financing, we're scaling back. Does anybody else think that makes any sense? Because I don't. So what we suggest is there are 2 areas for microfinance. This is also part of the Youth Entrepreneurship Act. But something that's very important for all of you to know is that microloans, young entrepreneurs, and you all know this, it isn't just about these, $1 million investments. You can start a business for $5,000, sometimes less. Right now with virtual tools, most young entrepreneurs, through software as a service, through other such things, they don't have to have a full-on army day one. They don't need infrastructure, they don't need rent. They can start a simple service, get a basic website for $5 a month, a virtual phone service for $20 a month, and boom, in 24 hours they are on their feet selling. The problem is that nobody, because the banks basically will say it's not worth our time, it's not worth our risk profile. That's the technical term, it's risk profile. Then you have the bigger banks that say, well, we don't even want to deal with microloans. So now you have all this money that even is in the system that banks won't lend because it still goes based on the fact that you have collateral, that you have somebody willing to co-sign, that you have a credit history. I'm sorry, I graduated college with a lot of money in debt. Anybody else know a 21-year-old who can pass a credit test right now? I thought so. So the key is what do we do? Well, there are some things we can do on the microloan level. First, we can double the amount of money, and we can tell the intermediaries that if they want the money, if they want the government incentives they get in other areas, then they should be able to invest that without the prejudice of these certain collaterals. Are we saying that they're going to invest in bad people or bad businesses? No, of course not. You're still going to invest in the most promising businesses, but change the risk profile. Make it more about what the potential revenue of the business is. There are many proven enterprises, like On Deck Capital is one, that proves that you could base loans on revenue generation. You could do things like invoice factoring. Go out and prove you can sell your business, the money might be higher, but you're putting money against your receivables. We can also do things like say if you're willing to put money in, so if you need $10,000, if you find $3,000 to $5,000, we'll invest the rest at a low interest rate. These are all plausible things that in the long run cost almost nothing. And the risk is very low. Remember, $33 million was the high in the last 5 years. We spend on average in this country billions of dollars on bank buyouts and all sorts of other things that don't in any way trickle down the systems that the banks will claim. These are the important things to realize. The next thing is procurement. Right now in this country, there are various different areas that the government must put its money towards when they are looking at vendors in the United States. For example, women, minority business ownership. All of these are basically taking a percentage of the overall vendor contracts of the government. Well, we propose that young entrepreneurs be added to the mix, because if you're going to be able to rebuild certain specific niches, why not add one that's looking to find a way to rebuild the hyperlocal and national economies? And lastly, crowdsourcing. There's a great thing you all should research, and I'll explain what crowdsourcing is to anybody that doesn't know. The McHenry bill. This is something that was just gone through Congress last Thursday and passed. Unbelievable, something passed in Congress. But the key that was interesting in this is crowdsourcing, just so everybody knows, is the act of going out into the world and saying you need X amount of dollars, and everybody who's willing to put that money in some cases it's nonprofit, like Kiva, if you're all familiar with Kiva, we're going to crowdsource the amount of money you need and then it's donated as a grant. But in the case of what we're talking about now is why can't we do the same thing and open it up to small business owners who need investment? Well, the problem is, up until recently, or I should still say now, because it's not a law yet, there's SEC regulations. There's government agencies that say, well, you can't just openly put the amount of money you need out there, because that's something called solicitation. That's illegal. So what this bill will allow people to do is up to $2 million, get a series of folks that are willing to put up $10,000 investments, and allow anybody on the internet to invest in a business, anybody in the world. Once they go over $10,000, it would meet certain regulatory issues, but at the end of the day, you can now go and tell your students, if this bill passes, that they'd be able to go online, a company called ProFounder, that's the US version of Kiva. They'd be able to go online and say, okay, we're going to raise $1 million by going to our friends and family and their friends and family, our college alumni and everybody, but openly ask those people for money and pass it and share it and use the social media sphere, which makes sense in this new internet-enabled world. It's a huge step. We think you can go farther, but this is the first thing that can actually see progress on the Hill. And hopefully, with your help, calling Congress, telling people that this is important, you can help your kids have an access to capital they've never had and nobody else has had in history by having this level of capital available to them. Apprenticeship to ownership programs. So there are tons of American small business. I saw a gentleman earlier talking about this at one of the roundtable discussions. There are literally tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, of small business owners that have no next of kin, or their next of kin are not interested in taking over the family business. Well, to keep that hyper-local engine going, we can start to create innovative pairing programs that say, if you're willing to apprentice under this person that might be an older generation looking for a way out, but can't sell the business because there's no liquidity, can't take on new ownership because it's very difficult to find new folks that want a hyper-local business that might not see the value in it. But training somebody to go through the ranks, now that's an innovative American idea. So what we propose, and what we're going to do as the Young Entrepreneur Council, and hopefully with many of you, is begin to locate in target areas around the country owners of small local businesses that are in their 50s and 60s on their way into retirement, hopefully. And the goal basically being that we can create a plan to put young people, the most active workforce, the most technologically savvy, smart business owner savvy folks, on a plan to eventually buy out that business. That is that is something that can keep the economy not just stable, but grow it and keep it more technologically advanced for the younger generation. Now this one's the one that gets me in a little trouble. I do agree with the president that we should look to educate our young people, that every college person that wants an education in this country should go to college. With that being said, college is not for every student. College is a decision that somebody should make Not just because they should go because they've been told they should go, but because of the fact that there's going to be a path to the success they seek. I meet countless young people that have told me that they went to college because that's where their parents went, or they were on a trajectory and this is where you get a job from, or they don't know what they want to do yet, they'll figure it out. Well, in a day and age when we have nearly $1 trillion in college student loan debt, and where liberal arts is still the predominant player in our education system, is that something we can afford? So we have a different alternative. Why not start to create franchise matching programs? Why not start to create programs that can help young people through vocational programming, through franchise training, take businesses instead of take on college education? We believe that you can get night school through other online programs, through mentorship, the ability to take these folks and put them into a placement program that makes sense. There are certain franchises in this country. I mean, my college education cost over $100,000. $100,000 today can buy a plethora of franchise ownerships, and it comes with a plug-and-play way of helping to rebuild our economy and not taking on more debt. This should be shown as an example that is possible. Public-private partnerships. As I said earlier, the General Capital Partners is the first program to utilize the President's Reform Income-Based Repayment Program. Now, no matter what politicians or mentors or educators or folks in your community will say, whatever their political beliefs are, whatever they think, there is not one magic bullet here, guys. There's no one solution that's going to change the economy. There's no one thing that's going to revolutionize or one organization that can do it. Government alone, not only should government not be the ones to lead the way, because they shouldn't even have a part in the free market in most cases. But at the same time, they can't possibly be the driver of job creation in this country. We need them to remove barriers so that private enterprise can step in, so that education can revitalize. These are the sorts of things that make the most sense to our young people today. Because if we can lead by example and show that this is not about politics, this is not about who's winning what, who's trying to get power or any of this, but it's about truly helping to rebuild the American dream. This is the sort of stuff that makes the most sense to try to push ourselves forward. I didn't need to work with a reform. I could have launched a fund on our own, but I saw the value of what was being created and I believed it deserves the promotion it's getting. And so these are the sorts of partnerships from the education level. Examples would be incubators on campus, where we can open your doors to various different angel investment groups and VCs and other people who can truly offer the mentorship, the capital, the things that are needed to add that missing component to the education equation on high school and college campuses. The practicum that they need. Partnerships with chambers of commerce in local communities. Offering business owners the chance to really meet the next generation, whether it be for workforce potential, or whether it be for strategic partnerships. These are the keys. This is what we need to push. Finally, as I've mentioned a few times, the government at the end of the day has a number of programs that you've probably never heard of. One of them is something called the Reformed Unemployment Insurance Act. This is it's now being added to Obama's New Jobs Act, but this is something that's been in the works and has been executed in multiple states to date. What this basically states is that for those that are for those people that have been displaced or that have been unemployed, that now you can make a new checkbox, and instead of just being on unemployment insurance if you're seeking a job, you can go and take unemployment insurance and start a business. So let's look at that. Where in the country can you possibly get upwards of $8,000 to $10,000, 10 weeks of unemployment insurance on average, where you don't have to pay back any interest on a loan, you don't have to pay it back, but you're able to take this money and try to create a real job for yourself? Right now, in certain states like Oregon, this has been tested. And the businesses that have been successful, 2.6 jobs were created for every successful business. Roughly 40% of the businesses that were created out of the UI program were successful and have made it at least a minimum of 2 years. While I'm not for general handout sort of unemployment, and I have problems personally with long-term unemployment, I think that this is the way to utilize government resources in a way that makes sense to business creators, and especially young entrepreneurs. Because I got to tell you, when I wanted to start a business, I lived on couches and ate multiple, feedings of the same Chinese takeout food. That's how young entrepreneurs do it. We work 25 hours a day and eat ramen. We don't need luxury. We don't need anything special. $10,000 to most young people in this country is a game changer. And that's one way to do it. You pair that with things like SEA, self-employment assistance programs. There are other things, of course, like institutes. I've met many incredible organizations I've never even heard of, which again is certainly something that I feel at fault for. You guys have done an incredible job in your local communities. I've started Googling as I've been hearing different names of different organizations, and I hope to meet you all in the next couple of days. But the key here is that there are real things that make sense, that can actually work. But at the same time, government has certain barriers to entry for our young people, some of which I've mentioned. The microloans burdens, the problems with all these different areas that are just basically in the way of helping our generation recover. Not to say with things like student debt we should give everybody and forgive the debt, no. But offer a way forward that makes sense, that incentivizes people and makes young America strong again. So in closing here, we're fighting back. Going back to that survey earlier, let me give you the highlights now of what's important to note about this generation. While unfortunately you have such a high amount of young people who've never gotten any form of entrepreneurship education, 88% think it's vital. So this is something that is polarizing. Young people want this. This is something that you have to fight for. You have to tell your districts and your administrators and your local communities this is something we're fighting for because the people you serve demand it, and you demand it for them. Second to that, you also have the fact that now 33% of this generation is self-employed. 33%. Now, whether that be through necessity, desperation, or the genuine need to start and be successful in a business, that is another staggering figure. 15% of those folks that we surveyed launched their business in college. This only shows folks like the angels, the VCs, and the mentors that when you partner and add practicum to your entrepreneurship programs, when you add mentors into the equation, you can create real sustainable success. 23% started their business as a result of being unemployed. This is up from 20% last year. The reality is, again, the necessity and desperation of our young people to earn an income in some capacity has incentivized them to realize they're no longer going to just sit there and wait. They are not going to be the people that send out another countless resume and hope that somebody that has the eggs and controls all of the dice is going to get back. It makes no sense, and they're realizing it in mass. And most importantly, that I love, is that even the folks that are in their own jobs today, 40% of them that we surveyed said they've started some form of side business. So maybe they won't form that full-on employee-based company when they're 25. But you know what? When they're 35, 45, 55, they will have started something that will have given them the bug. And it's our job to take that bug and make it into a full-blown passion project that they are proud to represent every day and help to rebuild this economy. So let me give you my final thoughts. There's a lot that has been discussed today. We do a lot of talking in this country about America's future. How millennials are America's future. But I want you guys to go back to your local communities, to your friends, to your students. Tell them that this is not the time for them to think that they are America's future. This is the time that they have to accept themselves as America's present and step up to the plate. My email address is scott@theyc.org. I'm going to give everybody in this room from my organization a free opportunity for every single person that you serve in your local communities and your programs. We currently launched a new virtual program called YEC Live. It's a 60-minute live chat with folks like Alexis Ohanian, the founder of Reddit, or Tim O'Shaughnessy, the founder of Living Social. And we offer people a code that they can come to our website for free. There's no upsells, there's no charges. We do this as our give back to the communities to utilize our brain trust for something positive. We do these on a bi-monthly basis, and we'd like to offer that to every one of your organizations, because this is about coalition. One thing that Kathy and I had a great conversation last night, this is not a moment for us to all compete or to think one organization should lead the way. This is a moment to create the unity behind an ecosystem that is yet to see its best day. And so please email me. I'm going to be sticking around here. I'll be in the hotel the whole night. Would love to give every single one of your students the mentorship capability of not just hearing the stories of these people live, but communicating with them through the internet and participating in our events for years to come. Thank you so much for what you do. I am proud to be in this room tonight, and let's help rebuild young America.